You guys keep leaving the door open. When you guys go out, I need you to close it, okay? Not right now, when you go out. All right, what's going on, guys? It's been a while. I haven't done one of these in a while, where it's just me. I might have a couple brothers join in a little bit, but for now, it's just gonna be me. And this video is just gonna serve mainly as an update. What's been going on? For a while there, I was making episodes pretty consistently, and then suddenly, I just stopped, right? And I even started a new series called Dying to the Flesh. If you guys remember, that was my last video that I had, my last episode with uh, with Dwayne from the bar, and man, that was a really cool episode. And but that was my last one. Shortly after, I ended up getting COVID, and I was in the hospital for a week, and it threw me off, man. I got COVID pneumonia, couldn't breathe, just really messed me up. There's 2 points there that I thought I honestly thought I was going to die at the hospital, and it made me reevaluate a lot of things afterwards. I started thinking about my family a lot. Once I started getting better, I realized I took my wife for granted. I took my kids for granted, and then I took my health for granted. I took just breathing for granted. That's what COVID taught me. God used COVID as a servant in my life. I'm not happy with the hospital bill, still paying that off. But at the same time, though, it was a sanctifying process for me, and that's part of the reason why I stopped making podcast episodes and I stopped uploading to YouTube. God used COVID as a servant, and for that I am thankful that I'm still here and that I'm here with my family, with my wife, and my two boys. Um, and it's just been a sanctifying process. So this video, my buddies are going to join, and I'm just going to talk about what happened in the last 2 years. It's been almost 2 years now, and has my theology changed? Have I grown at all? Hopefully. Um, what's going on with Saints Edified? If you guys noticed, I have a new, here it is, it's up right there, my logo. It's been updated, right? So yeah, I mean, hopefully you guys could appreciate this. I mean, those of you who were here before and were involved with the ministry. So yeah, hey, I have a buddy here that just jumped on. Let me see if I can get him on really quick. Give me a second here. There he is. What's going on,
What's
Ben?
up? Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Perfect. Yeah.
Okay. I don't have a fancy set like you. I just have this
Oh, bro.
wonky microphone, and
It's
you
all
know
good,
it is.
man. Yeah, bro. I don't know if you're hearing at all, but I just decided it'd be a good time to kind of let the people know, Saints Edified followers, subscribers. Believe it or not, man, at one point we had about like 60 to 100 people listening to the podcast,
Oh, wow.
and it stopped completely. So I was like, hey, why not just use this time to like, even both of us, man, because you've been a contributor to Saints Edified for a while, and kind of explain your thoughts on what direction you want to go. But I just want to quickly just share with people what happened, why did I stop, and all that, and maybe where exactly my theology has changed a little bit, because it has changed the last 2 years. So yeah, you guys know, Ben is going dad mode right now while going live. So
Feeding the babies.
there you go. Oh, look at that.
So
That's cool, man. That's cool.
it's as real as it gets. I don't know why I have it. I have the blur background, but it looks
Yeah,
super
it's all
weird.
good, man. No, it's all
Anyway,
good, man.
keep going.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, if
Don't
you have any
mind me
questions too, man. If you have any questions, let me know. And as I share these things,
Yeah.
I'm just going off memory here. So if you remember something better than I do, then let me know, because I'm just gonna go off memory. But yeah, man. After having COVID, being in the hospital for about a week, I just realized I took things for granted, bro. I took things for granted, and I had to really just consider my time on this earth. I have such little time, right? So shortly after getting better, my schedule, everything just messed up, man. My sleeping schedule, everything, and so my scheduling for podcasting just was not there.
Yeah.
It took me a good 3 months to kind of just feel normal again,
Right.
And
I'm totally listening, by the way.
no, it's all good, bro. It's all good. Yeah, it's all good. So yeah, man. I mean, I'm trying to decide how much I want to share with the whole COVID thing, because God
Sure.
taught me, He showed me a lot there. But while that was happening, a year being away from Saints Edified, I really had to reevaluate why the ministry exists. You know what I mean? So it got to the point where I was like, you know what? Why is it even necessary for me to even continue Saints Edified? It's costing me a little money. I have a server that for the website. It's taking me time. At times I buy
Time is a currency as well.
Yeah, exactly, man. So I realized, man, going back to my passion, bro, and that was church planning in the inner city. So yeah, I changed. I went back to the roots of Saints Edified, right? So let me see if I can share something really quick. Hold on. Let me see if I can go ahead. Well, it's gonna have my face on there, unfortunately. But here, let me.
Oh man, I see enough of that
Yeah.
already.
So right there it says Reformation in the inner city. My goal for the my goal for the ministry has changed, and now I'm focusing on inner city church planting and Reformation. So that being said, man, I'm going back to trying to create Bible study material. People that typically live in the inner city are usually Hispanic, Black, Spanish speaking of some sort, right? Whether they're Mexican or Puerto Rican or whatever, you know that they're these these guys that they need solid truth, right?
Right.
So yeah, so that's kind of where you come in too, because you started translating some of the articles, or even just writing articles just in Spanish to begin with, right?
Whoops.
So
Right.
it's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess it's not a good time to ask you questions because you're
No,
focusing
no,
on
no.
feeding. You're good. Oh, okay,
No,
okay,
I'm focused. I'm multitasking right now, and
good
you
man.
know how that is. So,
Yeah,
but I'm here, bro. I'm totally here. I
perfect,
mean,
man.
when it comes to COVID time, I don't think there's much contextualization that needs to be done, right? Because we all went through that.
Yeah,
I mean, we now refer to it as oh, when COVID, you know, that's all we say. So it's all good, man. But why don't you tell us more about after COVID and after you were saying how you realized time is so short, time is fleeting,
yeah,
the priorities, etc. What is your objective now from here on out?
yeah. Right, right.
What is your vision for Saint Certified? Because
Yeah,
you've
well,
given it like a general
yeah,
overview, right? But
yeah.
what does it look like on the ground?
Well,
And which is kind of related in some way to public theology, but
yeah.
I don't even know if we're doing that today.
We
So
might,
go
we
ahead,
might.
bro.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a good question, bro. So for one, I want to be. I want to focus a lot. The ministry is going to focus a lot on practical theology. Okay, it's going to focus on because that's the thing. You know, when it comes to Reformed theology, the Reformed tradition is very academic, right? Very, very academic. Christianity in general is intellectual, right? So we should embrace that at least. We should embrace the reading of books, but also the application of books, right? The application of reading these things. So Saint Certified is going to it's going to be it's going to have it has a heavy emphasis on raising children, on discipling children, and what that actually means, right?
I wonder why.
Well, I'll get to there in a minute. And but secondly too, man, is going to be is unity, right, amongst Reformed thinkers, Reformed believers. So we just have to accept the fact that not everyone's going to be EP, not everyone's going to be a strict subscriber to the confessions, right? Um, there's going to be some differences in how we handle the Sabbath, for example, right? Those things are going to be we have to model how to actually engage those things and still have that maintain that spirit of unity, right? And that it goes back to my logo, man. I redid my logo because people kept comparing it to horrible things and Illuminati and or I don't know, it was some weird stuff, right? Like but I want to keep the Trinity symbol, man, because there's no greater example of unity than we see in the Trinity, right? So I'm going to fight for that, bro. I want to keep that symbol there, and when we have these discussions amongst each other, man, I want to be able to let people know, especially when we church plant in the inner city, that there's going to be disagreements. It doesn't mean that we just, you know, separate and not talk to each other, but we can actually bear in love with one another, right? And grow together in that. So Saint Certified is going to focus a lot on those things. So it's going to focus a lot on small group Bible studies, family devotions type of thing. And so yeah, man. And also what you're doing, bro, is having solid Spanish material going to these families, man. I just think that's also going to be a huge key, a huge point for Saint Certified as well. Before we go on, bro, you want to share a little bit about your ministry really quick, because I don't think we've done that yet.
Well, I mean, it's a fledgling page, right? It's barely starting out. It's called El Boletín Reformado, and it's so far, at least for now, as you can see, the reason why I'm only keeping it to a limited objective right now is because of a lot of things going on in life. I'm preparing to take a test, etc. But It's a page that is dedicated to sharing Reformed content, solid Reformed content. And by Reformed, this is going to get into the stuff you were talking about, Christianity being intellectual and stuff like that. Because intellectual also means, oh, thanks. Yeah, there you go. Intellectual is a well-rounded word that does not refer only to knowledge, only to mental knowledge. At least the Reformed tradition, that's what it was like. That's what it was about. You know, you look at the quote unquote ivory tower theologians like John Calvin, you don't get any more pastoral than that, right? But anyway, this page is dedicated to that, to the Spanish speaking folk, especially because Reformed content in English, you can find it anywhere and everywhere. Reformed content solely in Spanish, and I don't mean stuff that has Spanish dubs, right? Like you're dubbing into Spanish stuff that Sinclair Ferguson teaching. No, I'm talking about Reformed content made by Spanish-speaking Reformed pastors, Reformed teachers, etc. It's not because there should be a preference for Hispanic teachers just because I'm Hispanic or whatever. It has to do mostly with the state of the church in Hispanic countries, which is mostly Roman Catholic or a weird syncretistic combination of Roman Catholicism and indigenous religions and stuff like that. But more than anything, the Hispanic people are mostly evangelical and charismatic, but charismatic of sometimes the weirdest degree. But really, a knowledge of the scriptures is scarce, is nil. It's almost non-existent, right?
Yeah.
So, and you showed my page.
Yeah.
It only says, I would appreciate it if you did like some photoshopping there instead of 35 likes, you put another 5 next to it.
Right.
Like I said, it's starting out. I mean, I
Yeah,
have
no,
some
it's starting
plans.
out. It's all
Some
good,
plans
man.
in the future to maybe do a podcast, but it would be solely in Spanish.
Yeah.
So
That'll be good, man. And you know what? Just really quick, man. I want to give a shout
Yeah.
out to Daryl really quick because Daryl, man, it's funny because I mentioned this on the Reform Blog Party last month that his page, what he does is basically what I am sanctified to do, but he's just a lot more consistent than I am, and he doesn't take a year and a half long break like I do. He continues to post. So Daryl, bro, I need to have you on here, man. I want to talk to you and just have you share your heart, man, because I have a feeling that we are in alignment when it comes to these things. So and he's also Presbyterian, so that's cool. So anyway, and Daryl, man, what's up? I'm glad you're here, bro.
am I?
So, hey,
That's
by the
my
way,
start.
like I need people to know this, man. That on Marco Polo, we're kind of used to this. Our kids popping up randomly, you know, and interrupting us and
Yeah.
making us lose our train of thought. So,
And you know, I don't know if you were going to say something else, but you mentioned about Christianity being, especially Reformed Christianity, being heavily intellectual and things like that. I mean,
academic,
yeah, academic. You even have the saying that goes, "Too heavenly minded to be of any earthly good," right?
Mhm.
I don't know if you've heard that before.
Mhm.
And usually we react to that and say, well, you know, you need to learn theology, you need to learn all these things to be of any earthly good, and so that we kind of rail against that saying, but that saying is there for a reason, you know, because at some point, Reformed Christianity made a division, an artificial division between the heart and the mind, a division that was not there, that consistently throughout the Reformed tradition has not been there.
Right.
Whenever you learn theology, it means that you're learning God. You're learning who He is.
Yep.
You're learning what the Heidelberg Catechism tells us, right? What is the chief end of man?
Yeah.
To glorify God and to enjoy Him forever.
Right.
But you can't do that unless you know who God is. But you can't know who God is unless you do what He says.
Yeah.
So, and for you and your children, right? Your guys' favorite phrase. We pass that on. Deuteronomy 6, right? You will write these things in the frontlets of your house. You will talk about them when you rise up, when you sit down, when you walk in the way, which is Psalm 1 as well, right? Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, etc., but whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He shall be like a tree planted by streams of water, who yields its fruit in its season, right? So that is Reformed Christianity. That was the Puritans. You know, you look at the Puritans, and for some, you know, obviously everyone says, "Oh, puritanical," or you just want to suck out the joy out of everywhere, and that's just not the case. So I'm glad to hear that Saints Edified is heading to recovering true Reformed Christianity, which includes both the heart and the mind.
No, exactly, bro. Exactly, yeah. And that's really the main goal. Really, that's the end goal for this ministry page, at least. You know, I mean, obviously, it's not a church. It's not a parachurch ministry. It's just a resource. You know, that's going to be for small church plants. You know what I mean? Because one thing that those of us who are involved in church planning know that it could be costly, right? Church plants could be costly. Sometimes we don't know what to pick. So just kind of going back to 2012, 2011, maybe even before that, man, I'll get a bunch of guys and we would get together. And what I'll do is I'll get like a Voddie Baucham sermon, right? Voddie Baucham, and I'll make a study out of it, right? So one of my favorite sermons was Why I Choose to Believe in the Bible. And I transcribed his sermon and made it into a two-part Bible study.
That's cool.
You know, and this is back before AI, you know, was able to do that stuff now, you know, but like I had it, and we used that for like a Bible study resource, and I still have it now to this day. I still have it in my like a Word document in my file somewhere. You know, I did another one on the Trinity, right? And the thing about it, bro, is that you know, obviously we have like R.C. Sproul or Ligonier Ministries, right? We have tons of resources now, and although Ligonier meant to get what was in the classroom to like the layperson, it still feels kind of academic, you know. To some degree, it still feels very academic. Sometimes the jokes obviously have a lot of background there. Like, I'll be honest with you, man. I remember when I was listening to R.C. Sproul and others, some of the jokes I just wasn't getting, right? It's just a whole different culture, a whole different background.
Yeah.
And sometimes I was like, man, like I don't know if I'm not getting this right. So I was hoping to one day create material for Saints Edified that people can use, that like from guys that look like us, pretty much. You know, even having like a background, like a backyard setting where we're just having a barbecue talking about theology, but really make it structured to where it's educational, right, and biblical. So I think it's just a different environment, different culture aspect. You know, no, we are not woke. You know, we don't hold to critical race theory. However, we are sensitive to the fact that cultures are different, right? You know what I mean? And my wife, well, you know my wife, but probably other people don't. But she's white, and we see it within our families, right? Whenever we get together, it's like it's so different for us. The jokes, the way how we joke, the way how we talk. So I do something that might offend her parents, because, you know, if I do it with my parents, it's just like a whatever thing, you know. So things like that, man, I want to consider. I want to really focus in on the inner city, whether it be black, white, Hispanic, doesn't really matter. But inner city in general, I think has been neglected by the Reformed Church for a long, long time.
I'm gonna move to the living room now. So yeah, keep going, bro. But I did want to jump in on something there. You know, when we, especially here in America, you know, we hear CRT, we hear woke, and I think our first instinct is to I'm not saying everyone, but you know, you have great people out there that are dealing with it, like Voddie Baucham. We have Voddie Baucham, we have other people, and but for the most part, we hear those things and we're like, oh, we're not even going to touch those topics, right, the 10-foot pole, because we're all about lectio continua, you know, just preaching through the text, and that's all we're dealing with. We're not really, those things, those issues are irrelevant to the pulpit kind of thing. And you look at the Bible, you look at Israel. Uh, I don't see that happening there. Those things were dealt with. I mean, if I had to pull an example out of my mind, is do not laws prohibiting intermarriage with other cultures. Why? Because of the pollution that would bring. Well, what pollution? False worship, idolatry. How? Through affecting our children, through influencing our children, influencing our wives, and thus repeating to a degree what happened in the garden, where man, as the head of his home, was not protecting his home and allowing his family to be influenced by things that they shouldn't have been influenced. And that is culture, that is social life. I'm not saying obviously that from the pulpit the pastor should be talking about these things all the time and
Right.
should sacrifice expositional teaching. Not at all, but these things are extremely relevant because we live in God's world. And even when people protest, for example, the very protest things. Just think about the June, month of June is coming, and we know what kind of parade is coming. I'm not saying that out loud because my kids know, but the very fact that people protest, or even for critical theory, or what we saw during COVID, BLM riots and protests, that instinct of protesting comes from Christianity. Now, people are like, well, what do you mean by that? Well, it's kind of like this. Let me see if I can explain it. I've been reading Abraham Kuyper's third lecture on Calvinism, and he talks about sphere sovereignty, but he also talks about why it is that we have that sense of justice, and why it is that we have that sense of this is not right, and we need a petition for something to be done. Now, there's one or two possibilities. Either God is the ultimate appeals court, or man is the ultimate appeals court when it comes to worldview, when it comes to standards, when it comes to what is right and what is wrong. It's either God or man, right? And so if you have a society in which it is man or society, well, guess what? You don't really have much recourse if you feel you've been wronged. Why? Because man is the one that makes the laws. And the laws can be one way today and one way tomorrow, completely different, left at the whim of whoever's in charge. Look at Hitler, who was the one-man rule. Whatever the Führer said went. It doesn't matter. But then you have God who is in control. And so even the most powerful president, the most powerful monarch, look at Oliver Cromwell and King Charles II. What happened? Or the Pilgrims, right? They determined, or not determined, they could see how things were being affected in their culture to the degree that they said the king is violating God's moral law. The king is violating God's moral law by treating his subjects as beneath him. And nobody is beneath the king in the ultimate sense. We're all equals. We're all made by God. We're all human beings who are here because we're born out of our mother's wombs. So therefore, we're all equal. Therefore, we're not all subject to one another. Therefore, we're all equal to someone else who made us. And that someone else is God. And that affects every area of life. That affects our culture, our society, money, whatever you can think of. And therefore, when people feel that they have a grievance, or people feel that they their rights have been violated, even now the word rights is everything is right. I have a right to everything, free of charge. But even that comes from Christianity, because you would not be protesting unless you felt that there was an authority above that you can petition to. Now, of course, I'm not saying people do consciously think I am protesting because of Christianity or because God exists. But that is the background, and that is what we can grab onto, I think,
Right.
when reaching to the urban societies and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
That was going to be my question for you next. It was going to be, so how do we tie that in, and why is it important to even reach the inner city urban area, right? Because, like I said before, the Reformed Church in general has done a horrible job at reaching these places in our country. It's a very suburban, high class tradition, really, in our country at least, right? So how do we actually make it where we reach the inner city? And here's the thing: in the inner city, you're going to actually reach people who are going to disagree with you politically. You're going to have people at your church who might think abortion's okay because that's all they that's all they actually knew growing up, right? They actually might even think that that same-sex marriage is okay as long as it's not you, or as long as like they might have that very libertarian approach, right?
Yep.
And for the reformed person, for the reformed pastor, we have to deal with that and actually talk to them and talk them through with it, but not by just like getting out the Constitution and start bashing over the head with that, right? Or sending a bunch of Ben Shapiro episodes, right? There's going to be a way that's going to look very differently in the inner city than in other areas. And I think again, it's hard and it takes wisdom and time, but you have to be there for the long haul. You have to be there to love these people and care for them. And so the question is, how much influence should the church have on government? Well, first, before we think about government, let's think about our local. First, let's think about the family unit first. Okay, let's think about the family unit.
Yeah.
And I was going to save this phrase for our public theology thing, but before we think of public theology, we have to think about our private devotion.
Sure.
Okay? So it starts with the individual. When you wake up in the morning, go to bed at night, you have to pray to God, devote your time and your mind to God's word, right? And then to your family and your children, your wife and your children, and from there, your neighbor, and from there you start growing this thing, right? So before we can talk about government, let's just talk about that first, because I think what the Reformed Church has done, especially the guys who are theonomists or theonomistic, you know what I mean? They just want to skip the inner city, skip the neighborhoods, and go right to the government and enforce this upon everyone. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? As opposed to fulfilling the Great Commission by making disciples of all nations, by baptizing them and also teaching them what Christ had commanded, right? So
I thought it was just baptizing them.
what was that?
I thought it was just baptizing them.
Yeah,
That the rest of the verses, it's like mind blowing, extremely important. Hold on, let me get some instruction here.
Yeah, man. So, anyways, guys, those of you who are listening, if you guys have any questions, any comments, feel free to chime in. Maybe if you want to, Daryl or Terrell, if you guys want to jump on, let us know, man. This episode is dedicated just for me to kind of get back in the groove. Those of you who have listened to me in the past, I want you guys to come on too. So, anyway, are we good now, Ben?
Yeah. So let me see if I can. I was gonna start with a little something that is related to it. Let me see if I can circle back.
Okay.
Circle back. Remember that? Circle back to that after this. This light is very bad.
It's all good, man. I think it works.
I don't know. Whatever. So before even getting to all that, and I think that you were doing good right there by saying it starts with the individual.
Yeah.
Maybe this would be a good clarifying thought. Abraham Kuyper, again, going back to Kuyper, and sometimes it can be a little hard to read, but sometimes it's really, really easy to follow. So let me see if I can make this a little easy to follow. Because sometimes I think that we put the cart before the horse with these questions, right? Like, how much influence should the church have in government? Well, that's a good question, but I think you have to lay the groundwork first. And I think we should start by two categories that Kuyper gives us when it comes to the different spheres of society, the different institutions, right? I think we've heard that phrase before, as like marriage being a divinely ordained institution, the state being divinely ordained, etc. But they have respective spheres of sovereignty, and usually we only talk about the state sovereignty, right? Okay, how much sovereignty should the state have, etc., etc. but it's almost as if the church is this completely pietistic, completely unrelated body of people that only gather on Sundays to listen to sermons, maybe share the gospel, and that's about it, right? But no, the church is a whole sphere all of her own. But before even getting to that, there's two categories that Kuyper talks about. There's organic and mechanic when it comes to institutions. Organic is, for example, the fact that you and I are men. Like, we're objectively men. We don't have to be biologists to know that we are men, right? Or know who other people who else is a man and a woman.
Mhm.
That binary is organic, meaning it's going to continue for as long as mankind endures. There will always be men and women. And when you have men and women, what else do you have? You get marriage, hopefully, and out of marriage you get procreation. Now, it's organic in the sense that is the rule of God's creative order. That's just how it works. No matter what you do, no matter what you cut off, no matter what how much money you spend to try to change yourself, that will never change. Uh, so that's one example of what's organic, and then you have mechanic. It's kind of in the word, right? A mechanic has to use tools to twist something from one end to the other, or to open to make things fit, to make things work, right?
Mhm.
So the state is the mechanic arm, or the mechanic institution that makes things work by making them work, by imposition, by force. That's not a bad thing. That's just defining what the state, one of the aspects of the state. um, and so within that organic and mechanic aspects, then we talk about the church. Then we can talk about the church. So the church is a body. It's not a headless body. It's Christ. It's Christ is the head, and the church is his body. And our bodies are organic. You don't need the state to make your heart work. You don't need the state to make your lungs do what they do, right? So that might seem silly, but I think it drives it's going to drive the next point home, and that is that the church is an organic institution, and therefore that speaks a lot about what the state's role is when it comes to the church. The church, as an organic body, has its own sphere of sovereignty, and within its own sphere of sovereignty, there's the two, how would I call this, the two channels or realms in which it works. One is the internal, and the other is the external. Sorry, this might seem like a lot, but hopefully our listeners can kind of follow with this,
Oh, yeah.
because yeah, go ahead. Someone's
No, no,
saying
no,
go.
no. I'm saying that what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut this little section up and make it its own little video. So
Okay.
it'll be easier for people to come back, and
Yeah,
this is good stuff, bro. I can tell this is probably for the public theology thing, huh?
it is.
Yeah, okay, it's okay.
I couldn't help it, man. I mean, you set me up with the question.
Yeah.
What role should the church have on the state?
Well,
But
hold on,
yeah,
I
go
want to
ahead.
give people a quick update or quick, I guess a disclaimer, right? So we're supposed to do a block party on this topic, public theology. So I think our brains have been just focused on that for the last month or so. So yeah, anyway, go ahead, bro. Continue. Hey, and by the way, Daryl says take your time.
Yeah, hey, Daryl, you should jump on, man.
He actually might jump on. So we'll see.
Yeah. So, what was I saying? So the internal and the external, right? An example of the internal would be the church talks about the impact of the atonement. That's not something that concerns the outside world, right? Or the different views within atonement, or different views of assurance, or what happens in a synod, at a presbytery. Those things, that's not the concern of the state or of the outside world. That's an internal issue. and then there's the external, in which the church speaks to those outside, right? It speaks to things outside of it, but that are still relevant to it. And so, what role should the church have? What was the question? What role should the church have on the state, or the state on the church? I'm not sure. I would go ahead.
No, I'm trying to find it here. Oh, yeah, it was a comment, right? One of my comments. Yeah, it was how much influence should the church have on the government?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, to finish the thought on sovereignty, the state doesn't get to dictate to the church. Going back to the organic and mechanic distinctions, right? The state has no business dictating to the church what it should do and what it should not do when it comes to worship, when it comes to even to not just worship, because a lot of people are more than happy for you to just sing to your God and read about what you think your God says, right, from a like an atheistic point of view, within your church walls. They get upset when you bring that out, as if the church has any bearing outside. Oh, separation of church and state, which is one of the most misunderstood phrases ever uttered. And so, with that said, remember also that the body of Christ, which is the church, speaks on behalf of Christ with the authority of Christ. That Christ said when he said, "Go, baptize them, and make disciples, teaching them all that I have commanded you."
Right.
And remembering also that this body of Christ, Christ being the head, and Christ being God, and God being the one who appoints kings. You have that in Proverbs 8. Where did I put it in my computer? You have that in Proverbs 8, 12. See, let's read that, and I think this should tie back to the question. Proverbs 8 verses 12 through 16. I, wisdom, dwell with prudence, and I find knowledge and discretion. The fear of the Lord is hatred of evil. Pride and arrogance and the way of evil, and perverted speech I hate. I have counsel and sound wisdom. I have insight. I have strength. By me kings reign, and rulers decree what is just. That's huge. By me princes rule, and nobles all who govern justly.
Right.
And also the unjust ones as well, right? Then Proverbs 21, 21:1. The king's heart is a stream of water in the hand of the Lord. He turns it wherever he will. So those passages are clear to show that one, God is the one that appoints kings, and God doesn't do something and then just leave it be, right? We can't be theists when it comes to everything but the government, and when it comes to the government, kind of say, well, they can do whatever they want, and we're supposed to just follow what they say. Now, of course, Paul does say, honor the emperor, obey the king. Romans 13 as well. But the point that I'm trying to get to is that as insofar as the church speaks on behalf of Christ in the authority of Christ and his word, the church has every right to and every duty to speak to the state when it comes to the law of God, the moral law of God, and what is expected of them to do. How they're expected to govern justly, since they derive their power from God. And as I said before, we're all made equal, and so the ultimate monarch over us all is God, and that is over the state as well. Remember what Paul said to what was his name? He was committing adultery with his brother's wife. Do you remember that? No, it wasn't Paul. It was John the Baptist.
I'm going blank right now, man. Sorry.
Yeah,
I was actually going to set you up with another with
but
another
anyway,
video. Yeah, go ahead.
so it was either John the Baptist or the Apostle Paul.
Mhm.
While incarcerated, he tells a governing ruler, it is not
Oh,
lawful
okay.
for you to have your brother's wife. That's public theology right there, and
Mhm.
that is the a Christian, that is a pilgrim, but nonetheless one who speaks on behalf of Christ, bearing that authority upon a legislator. So
Right.
so there's no separation of church and state right there,
Right.
you know. But anyway,
No, yeah. So,
that made sense.
no, bro, that made plenty of sense, man. I'm gonna I want to share a little snippet of a episode with on kingdom polemics, right? So this is a this is a podcast from Aldo Leon. He's a pastor in Miami, PCA, and he had an interview with the pastor at Coral Ridge Presbyterian Church in Florida, Loudon, I think. And I just thought the discussion was so helpful for me to understand why this even exists, why public theology is even a topic, right? So let me see if I can just quickly share my screen really quick. And I thought this part right here, it's about 45 seconds long, but it's very, very helpful. See if I can do my entire screen, share audio. Hey, yeah, okay, I'm gonna mute myself too, man. So.
Don't miss the principle of Calvin's Geneva. They looked to the church and said, we see how the Christians are living according to what has been prescribed in the church charter in Geneva, and we want that to be the law of the land. That's
Oops, sorry about that, Slowly.
mandated religion, but don't miss the principle of Calvin's Geneva. They looked to the church and said, we see how the Christians are living according to what has been prescribed in the church charter in Geneva, and we want that to be the law of the land. That's public theology at its finest. And there's Calvin right behind it. I mean, we've talked privately about the great.
For some reason,
I told you to pay the internet.
I know, man.
bill.
I know. For some reason, my Cricket internet is not working. It's like what John knows. Try again.
Commissioners and diviners of Westminster Assembly, the Samuel Rutherford, who wrote the work Lex Rex, which said that there is a limit on the power of the monarchy. There's a limit on the power of the king.
All the divines had that book in their hand.
Absolutely. And no, because what do they believe? That there is a true sovereign.
So this is the part here. This is the part that I want people to listen to that's coming up. So I'm going to pretend like I knew that was going to load and freeze on me really quick, and then just tell people that this is the part. Come on, it's not going to work now. Let me see.
And he's seated on the throne, and that is public theology. That is informing the people of how.
And
absolutely. And no, because what do they believe? That there is a true sovereign and he's seated on the throne. And that is public theology. That is informing the people of how they are to respond to the civil magistrate. And
yes, that was the part there. There is a true sovereign and he is seated on the throne. That is public theology. That is informing the people how to respond to the civil magistrate and how it relates to their citizenship in heaven. So I just thought that was a really good recap there that our brother did there. Let me move.
Yeah.
Yes, and I apologize for the slowness. I mean, there's a lot of Wi-Fi here, and we live with a family that's also pretty large. So the internet is being shared by all of us. So anyway. But yeah, anyways, I just thought that was a really good definition for public theology, man, and just a good summary on why it's needed. And bro, the way how I see it, man, I mean, this might sound like high theology, right? It's really complicated. It has to do with government and politics. But bro, I mean, like, if you just obey the Great Commission, right? Just do the Great Commission, and naturally this is going to happen, right? So naturally you're going to want to reach out to people who just happen to work in government, right, or people who are in schools, things like that. And if their heart changes, then we should see a change in our laws, and a change in how our government runs the society, right? So the influence, I just think that again, I'm not saying about all theonomists, but in general, the discussion it comes off in the discussion like they just want to take power, and if you don't do this, then there's going to be consequence, right? That's kind of the feel that you get sometimes from theonomists, but in reality, there's a means to actually see government glorify God, right? And that comes with the church influencing the government by first influencing like neighbors, well families, neighbors, the city, right, the state, and so on. So, you have any thoughts?
Yeah. The state is not, while it has its sovereignty, by virtue of being, the deacon of God, right? To punish evildoers. So it's the servant of God to punish evildoers. But when it does not obey the law of God, it is the duty of the church to speak to the magistrates, and to try to put some feet to this, I guess, to give a more concrete example. As Christians, you can only be a consistent Christian if you're pro-life. You cannot be a consistent Christian if you are pro-choice. If you're in favor of the murder of the unborn, you're not a consistent Christian, right? Now, that is a doctrinal position. That is a statement of faith. That is a belief that you hold. That is the doctrinal arm of things. And this kind of goes in line with what we said at the beginning about the Christianity being heavily academic, and sometimes there seems to be more of an emphasis just on that direction than the pastoral or even the evangelistic efforts. But so there's the didactic or the doctrinal aspect of things where we proclaim as the church, we proclaim to the world, this is wrong and this is right. That's one arm, but it'll be incomplete. It'll be insufficient. It'll be completely powerless if that is not followed by some action. If that's not followed by, we actually believe what we say we believe, and here's how. So, as an example, I used to go out to the abortion mills here in the city where I live in Bakersfield. And
Me too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You did? No, Arturo did too. Arturo accompanied us. Even. Do you remember the Women's March?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
That was insane.
But I mean, I can't forget the time that my phone was taken from me too. By the way.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, you gave us. No.
Yeah, I actually gave it.
Yeah. But anyway, Arturo, myself, and several other people, we used to go to the abortion mills. We call them abortion mills. They're not clinics. They're abortion mills. They're dedicated to the slaughter of the unborn. But they do other things. They offer dietary plans. You know that if Auschwitz offered dietary plans, it wouldn't make it any less of an Auschwitz than it was, right? So the same thing here. But anyway, so there was the didactic arm, and now there was this where we actually went to the abortion mills. But again, it would not have been enough to just go out there and say, don't kill your baby, which we did. But we also followed it up with, and we actually did have the opportunity to help mothers who said, you know what, I'm not going to do this, but I need some help. And so we helped them, right? And so we were trying to back up what we were saying with actions. But again, there's a further clarification to make there too. Also, you're saying that the church should both preach the word and do charitable deeds. Well, sure, but that's not the extent of it. The extent of it was the Great Commission to teach them all that I have commanded you. Why do you think that orphanages, first of all, when the Romans would leave babies exposed for them to die, the Romans, right? The civilized, advanced peoples that would expose their babies to the elements, it was the Christians who picked them up. It was the Christians who went out there, got these abandoned babies, and gave them a home. Now that's nice. That's very nice. But it didn't stop there. Why do you think that these orphanages became the first academic centers? The places where these children that were taken, that were abandoned and were taken in, well, they were now given a Christian education. They were now raised to be good citizens. They were now raised to be godly men, be godly women, etc. And so the aim all along is for the whole person, and the aim all along is to do that. So following up with the abortion mill example, the charitable aspect is great, but we also preach the gospel, right? So if we just went out there and said, well, we're going to help mothers, but we're not going to mention the gospel because it might turn them off from helping them, stuff like that.
Right.
What good would it be? And I don't want to diminish the need out there, the dire situations that people are in, or even the urgency of some circumstances in which this is their fifth child and they have no resources and stuff like that. So we need to try not to step on any toes and just help them out with diapers. What good would it be if the mom chose to give life to their baby, which is great, but they went home without hearing the gospel, and they died that very day without hearing the gospel,
Right.
unrepentant, and heading for eternal damnation? What good would that be? How would that have been a good example of us as Christians to not give that well-rounded approach? So that is public theology, in which we're both doing the didactic arm, the doctrinal aspect, and the practical aspect, and the evangelistic aspect, and the whole person aspect. And I think all of that is involved in that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, no, and it's a huge need too, man. I mean, like we see where Planned Parenthood plans their clinics, you know what I mean, or abortion mills, right?
Yeah.
But we see where it's
Totally unintentional.
yeah, and
That's
and-
exactly what the founder, Margaret Sanger, wanted. But anyway,
Right.
go ahead.
No, yeah, man, yeah, and one thing too, just so people know as well, is that like I remember for years, several years, I did want to, and I think a lot of people feel this way too. They want to be part of an abortion or a pro-life ministry or like that's organized by a church. The AA crowd is kind of too crazy, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
maybe there's another crowd somewhere within the church that's more biblical and reasonable in their approach, instead of just wanting to offend people, right? And so, or protesting other churches. And I remember, you were involved with this ministry, and
Not AA.
yeah, no, it was an AA, no,
Big
yeah, and it was great, man. I mean, like I remember we went out there, shared the gospel was being preached. And here's the thing, man, like although a lot of the women didn't listen to us, they still went in there anyway. But we're thankful that it's God the one that causes the seed to grow. We just have to plant the seed, right? And even afterwards, I mean, there's testimonies already out there of guys who once they became a Christian, they became a Christian because they heard the gospel preached, and then later on they felt bad, that the guilt finally got to them that they murdered their own baby, and somehow God used that to go to a church and hear the gospel again and then profess faith, right? So we hear those kind of testimonies, right? And and sometimes those same people are the ones that are out there, on the other side of that gate, just trying to plead with people to please don't do what you're going to do, and thankfully, man, I mean, again, God is sovereign. We know that He works in mysterious ways, but at the same time, we're very we have to just keep in mind that just because they just go in there anyway and don't listen to us, the gospel is powerful, and it's the gospel that's going to actually save them, right? Not you holding up a sign and yelling at them. It's the gospel that's being preached that's going to save them. So, good stuff, bro. I mean, let's see.
And you mentioned. Well, sorry, I don't know if you want to move on to.
No, go ahead.
But you mentioned AA. I'm gonna go for it. AHA, Abolish Human Abortion.
Mhm.
Now,
Yeah, sorry.
they have some good material, especially because, and I'm not gonna get into the intricacies of pro life and abolitionist stuff here, because that's not the focus. But they have some good stuff because it's bolder than a lot of pro life stuff. But on the other hand, pro life stuff, it has some good stuff when it comes to, sometimes you do have to be cautious and wise and prudent, etc. Whereas AHA is usually very like on your face, whether you like it or not. I don't care. But the emphasis seems to be more heavily on the legislation aspect, right? Even when you're at abortion clinics, it's like abolition now. Wait, this is not Capitol. You wrong place. This is an abortion mill. Like this is not a place where legislation is passed. This is a place where people are coming to murder their babies because they think they have no choice. You came to the wrong party here. Like sure, you want to talk about abolition now, great. This is not the place for it. So time and place for wisdom. But that is there is that arm. And you know what? I had never heard of going before your city council,
Right.
and addressing the council members with the authority of Christ and His Word, until I came across End Abortion Now, Jeff Durbin, etc.
Yeah.
I'd never heard of that. I was like, that's actually a thing we could do. It's like, why not? Those people in charge of your city, and therefore that is a local government. Usually we just think federal and presidential elections. And at most, we're always mad at Gavin Newsom here in California. That's state level. But where is the Christian involvement in our local politics?
Right.
Well, we shouldn't be involved in politics. The word politics comes from a polis, a city. You're in a city. You can't help it. You're going to be part of it. Everything is regulated by politics, even the water you drink. So, but I think that leads to, number one, finding a balance between those things and prudence, and etc. But also realizing that, I forget where in the New Testament it says that the gates of hell shall not prevail against the church, and we say this all the time in Reformed circles, right? The gates. This is not a passage that says that the church is on the defensive. This is a passage that affirms the opposite, that the church is in the offensive against the gates of hell, and the gates of hell will break down, will come down, and therefore the church is not a retreatist institution, one in which we just go on Sundays. It's like, oh, we're so tired from the world, and I need to hide over here. Of course, there's a refreshment aspect of it. There is an aspect of of Sundays, the Lord's Day, being a place and a time for rest, but it's also an armory. I just heard this recently, and I thought it was really good. The church is an armory. It is where we are equipped and prepared to go out against the gates of hell and proclaim Christ's authority over all spheres of sovereignty. Because although each sphere has its sovereignty, the one that gave them their sovereignty is the Lord God, who has authority over them to, as we read at the beginning in Proverbs 8, who appoints kings, it is by me that they rule, it is by me that they reign. You don't have this pietistic approach in the scriptures where you're told, Christian, just go to church on Sunday. The rest of the week, it doesn't exist. All the Bible talks about is Sunday, and that cannot be farther from the truth. Just one example from the Bible. Again, I know that we said that we should be appealing more to the Bible, right? Queen Esther. That's an excellent example of public theology in which Mordecai, before he's promoted, Mordecai being Queen Esther's uncle, what was Esther's Hadassah, her name before she became Esther, her Jewish name, Hadassah, before she became Esther, her Babylonian name. Mordecai, being a layman, appeals to his niece, who is now royalty, who is now a monarch, to do what is right on behalf of the Jewish people. That's public theology right there. Tell me at what point that becomes private theology. If Mordecai didn't believe in public theology,
Yeah.
then the Jews would have been extinct. Furthermore, once Haman is hanged, right? Once he's hanged, it doesn't stop there, because there's still that edict coming to destroy the Jews.
Mhm.
So what happens? Esther and Mordecai again petition the king and say, give us the liberty and authority to defend ourselves.
Yeah.
Imagine if all the people that take Romans 13 to say we should do everything and whatever the government says, we should do everything, obey them in everything.
Yeah.
They would have reprimanded Esther and Mordecai and say, why are you asking the king to let us defend ourselves?
Right.
That is the law of the land. Therefore we have nothing to do but just lay down and let the sword fall.
Mhm.
That's not what happened. They appealed to what? The highest law of the land, the magistrate of the world, the just judge of the earth.
Yeah.
That's public theology right there.
And bro, and the fact that you're quoting Old Testament scripture and relating it to public theology, because again, people just think of Romans 13 and they just want to end it there, right? And they're passive about everything in life. We're just supposed to live these very quiet, passive Christian lives in our home, but outside we can just kind of take the punches, right, and move on. But in reality, I mean, when it comes to apologetics, everything in scripture seems to point to the exact opposite. Do the exact opposite, right? But I think another quote from Pastor Rob at Coral Ridge, I have it here. A good public theology starts with a good biblical theology, and it's just understanding the Bible as a whole, right? And understanding like what exactly each author intended. And if you just do that through scripture, you're going to see public theology, not just in scripture, but also being commanded of us as well. You know, our Christianity is not meant to be a secret, right? We're supposed to change the world and do the same thing what the apostles did. And so yeah, man. I mean, that's great. I love what you said about you got to tell me who you got it from too, man, because I want to hear that sermon or whatever you're listening to. You said that we're not retreatist.
Yeah.
That the church is in a retreat. What'd you say again? What was that?
The church is not a retreatist institution.
No,
You know,
no,
let me bring something else here. So the dominating principle in this discussion, the key thing that we're talking about, or what the key aspect of the church is not just soteriology, it's not just salvation, it's not although obviously that's what controls everything else. We live in a world that is bigger than just our ecclesiastical and doctrinal emphases and focus and foci, right? There's a state, society, and church, and so we tend to forget the first two and just focus usually on the church. But so what happens is that we don't understand the role that the state should have. We don't understand the role that the government should have, and we don't understand what role the church should have. And so, what are we left with? We're just left with proofreading some text and just saying, well, it's not as if the rest of the Bible doesn't speak to this. It's not as if history doesn't speak to this. All of history, until very recently, has been one in which the church has asserted the authority of Christ. And I'm not getting to the whole. I mean, I'm not very well versed on the theonomy aspect of the discussion. If you want to get into that, but at the end of the day, we either believe the Lord when He said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations." So, if all authority in heaven and earth, only when it comes to your salvation. But the rest of the stuff, well, that's up to the state.
Yeah.
Imagine Jesus saying this, well, the separation of church and state.
No, bro. Yeah.
Only go and preach the gospel, but that's it. Don't teach them all that I have commanded you, right? No. Just preach the gospel.
No, bro. No. I mean, I think you brought up several good points, man. And I just want to let people know that all those episode on this was very, very helpful. If you guys want, just save that link for later. And he's also on Spotify too. You guys can listen to it. But one thing that you brought up too was how it was just up to very recently where the church has been like kind of like, well, I don't know about government and maybe we shouldn't do an established religion type of thing, right? I think a guy who does a really good job is Gavin Beers, and he has a 3-part series. I'll post it here in the live chat, so you guys can see it there.
Oh, nice.
It's kind of cut off a little bit. Here, there we go. Hopefully it works. Just go to Sermon Audio, type in Gavin Beers Establishment Principle, and it's a 3-part series. I listened to all of them already. Bro, I was just like amazed, man. I had no idea. Seriously, I've been reformed now since at least 2009-ish, 2010-ish, probably around there. And I've been Presbyterian in conviction since 2011, 2012. And this is the first time I actually come across this. Like I heard about the establishment principle before, but I didn't realize that Christianity, for the most part, had a view of government, right? And like some Presbyterian I am, like I skipped over chapter 23 in the Westminster Confession, like I was like, I guess about government politics. I'll just put that aside. And I'm just surprised about what I read, right? I'm like, so, and look, man, I mean, like I know we're already over an hour, and people are like, what the heck? I didn't realize you guys were talking about this, but next month, I'm telling you, we're gonna have other guys on here. Not on here, sorry, on the Reform Block Network, right?
Yeah.
And we're all going to talk about this and chime in. And obviously, Ben came ready. He has a lot of. I think out of everyone, he probably read the most material, probably. But I mean, if you guys want more of this, then next month we'll probably go more in depth. I mean, again, with 3 or 4 or 5 guys, it's going to be like a 2-hour, 2.5-hour episode where we're just going to talk about these things, right? So. But yeah, man. I mean, I'm glad that I'm really glad that you said all that. I'm sure it's very helpful. I thought by now, Daryl would come on, or maybe even RJ. But the last 15 minutes, bro. Because I know you could keep sharing on this topic, man. But I want to save it for next month. I really want to save these.
I'll stop.
These thoughts
just tell me.
Yeah,
stop.
Bro, you should, I'm not even trying to I'm not saying this just say it, but you're sharing really good things that I want to, I kind of want to stop on and kind of just chew on that a little bit and kind of go back and forth with you on it. But But we'll have an episode on an episode on that for next month. So, but yeah, man. I mean, just the last 15 minutes, bro. Again, I don't know who's gonna stop by in the last 15 minutes, but. One thing that I want to do, man, is kind of talk about a little bit everything that we just talked about, right? The establishment principle, or the fact that that Christians should be involved in government. What we could do right now, whether you're in the inner city or not, is first disciple your family well, right?
Yeah.
And one thing, I went to a conference recently, and that's why I share this, because I don't want to come across like if I have it down, right? Like I do family worship every day and this and that. Like, no, man. I mean, as much as I say that, I wish
3 hours every day.
I wish I could, but in reality, man, I was really encouraged by a minister at the Gospel Reformation Network conference, and what he said was to never stop starting. Okay, when it comes to family worship, never stop starting. And the fact that it came from him, a minister in the PCA that's all about family worship and things like that, I just kind of felt like a huge relief in the whole room. Like it was a room full of pastors, right? Men.
Yeah.
And for me personally, bro, I was like, man, dude, I was like, so I'm not the only one that just struggles with this, right? This is against our own nature, right? Like to do this. So anyway,
No, that's a great point. But sorry, I don't want to cut you off there.
No. If you had a thought, go ahead.
Okay, I'll cut you off. So thank you for actually tying it back like that, because it's good to be able to like you said, people are like, what the heck, what are you talking about? I don't want to sound like we're just talking about these lofty things, like, okay, well, I guess we have to go talk to our city council member, we have to go to the Capitol. What? No, not at all what we're saying. I mean, sure, that can be there for some Christians, but it all starts with you, the individual. It all starts, if you're a father, it starts with your role in leading your family. If you're just a layperson, if you're single, right? A lot of times we single the singles out, right? Like we only talk to fathers and families and stuff like that. But whatever your status in the church is, and I'm just a layman, so I can speak to this. Start with yourself. You cannot do the two arms that we talked about, the doctrinal and the practical, to other people. Never stop starting there. Yep. You cannot do that to other people if you yourself are not seeking the Lord, if you yourself are not being equipped by the word, if your mind, in the language of Romans 12, if your understanding is not being renewed every single day, you have no business going out there. If you're neglecting your family, like we talked about at the beginning, right? Like sometimes we lose sight of our priorities, and so it starts with yourself, starts with your family. Furthermore, especially with families, that's key, because we usually in these topics talk about the state and the church and important topics. But guess what the state is made up of? Human beings. Where did those human beings come from? From wombs, from people, from mothers who birthed them. Which means what? That the family is the primary institution of society. Which is exactly what is being warred on by the unbelieving world, that they're trying to tear down. That no matter how things look like, remember, a lot of people say, oh, this is the worst time, oh, COVID, this is the worst time. You need to do some studying in history, because every period has gone through their times. But anyway, the family is the primary institution, and therefore, when you're changing diapers, here I go to what Martin Luther really talked a lot about. You want to make a change for the world. You want to show the world where your priorities are. Change that diaper for the glory of God. Do it with all your might. Well, don't hurt the baby, but do it with all your might, and wash those dishes for the glory of God. Homeschool your kids if you're homeschooling them for the glory of God. Lead them in family worship for the glory of God. But I don't really know much. I'm not, well read. It doesn't matter. Never stop starting, right? You open the word, read a chapter, but you have no idea what impact that will have on your children, what things will stick to them. Catechize your children. It's the simplest thing you can do. Read a chapter, look up catechism and songs on YouTube so that they stick. I do that with my kids, and I cannot help to have those songs stuck in my head. No matter what I do, they're stuck in my head. The simplest thing you can do is do that, pray with them, model that out with them. And I say this knowing that I fail a lot at these things. But thankfully, again, we don't look to man, because man is not the monarch of the world, but Christ is. I look to Christ's perfection, and so should you. And if you haven't started, never stop starting. Today is the day. But it starts there. The state, the countries, the nations, it all starts with the family. And guess what, Dad? If you're listening to this, it starts with you. But this is not a burden. It is a burden, but it's not to make you feel guilty, like you haven't started and look at all the stuff you missed out on. Never stop starting.
Yes, amen, bro. And that's why I want to tie it back to what we said earlier. I mean, everything that we mentioned and that you talked about, that we're going to talk about next one too. It's going to seem very. If people are like me, it's going to be somewhat intimidating. Like, man, like to actually learn how the government works and who to talk to. Because that's the thing about us. We want to be practical, right? We don't want to just gain the knowledge and debate online all day. We actually want to put this to work. So one thing that I said, I was like, look, like when it comes to politics, I'm not the guy. Um, there was a time in my life where I was like so super pro GOP and listened to Ben Shapiro all the time, and and
Where's
had
your MAGA hat?
yeah. But by that time, I already like I gave up on GOP at that time. But like
Yeah.
I was just so involved. But even then, at the time, bro, at the time, all I really knew to defend was Second Amendment, or like I didn't really
Right.
know. I didn't know very much. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then now, especially, it's funny because being Presbyterian now at a Presbyterian church, you see the church government, and bro, like you wonder where the United States got their form of government from. They got it from the Presbyterian Church. It's almost identical. It's crazy. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. So now I'm learning these things, and if you're like me again, just start slowly, get like become informed, but don't overload yourself, right? Especially if you know that government and politics isn't your thing, like me.
Yeah.
Then just take it slow, and you'll see. And also talk to your fellow brothers like how we're doing right now, right? Just talk to someone about these things, someone at your church. I think one thing that people forget as well is okay, you're doing well with your family, but now you want to go online and talk to other Christians. Like talk to the Christians at your church.
Mm.
Talk to them,
Yeah.
and like these little fires, and you start seeing how these things that are so important are beginning to be talked about and spread more and more. So that's why I decided to do, man. I mean, that's why I went to that conference, that Gospel Reformation Network. It's a network within the PCA that are of guys that are confessional and conservative,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I went there so I could network and get to know these guys more. And I'm so glad I went, man. I mean, they're doing the same thing, right? Again, they all agree. Well, most of them, I think, all of them agree with public theology, but
Yeah.
they have these very practical ways on how to start now.
Right.
And so, yeah, like you don't have to read Rutherford Ford's Lex Rex book on monergism. It's like a 500-page book. I was going to share it too during the blog party, but I decided not to. And
Yeah.
for now, just get the confession, reach chapter 23,
Yeah.
and then from there, kind of break it down, and again, have these conversations online with your friends at church. Men encourage men fellowships, like as you know, Ben, I've been doing this for a long time. Like I've been trying to. I always want men to get together because in the church, man, right now that like men just want to be to themselves. They don't want to fellowship very much. They might go to Bible study, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Men need to get together and
Yep.
and edify one another and sharpen one another.
Yep.
So I encourage you guys to do that as well. Like this fellowship with the men at your church, talk about these things, and I think it starts there first, right? That
Yep.
a very grassroots, organic
Mm-hmm.
type of
Mm-hmm.
method before we can start actually now talking to President Biden and changing his mind on things, right? But
Send him a letter. You'll change
yeah.
things. Yeah.
Yeah. So also too, I'm sorry. One more thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just recently, we decided to homeschool our son again.
Mm.
We tried public school system. It didn't work. So it's easy for me to be like, well, my son's not in there anymore. I'm good, and walk away from that, right? But I told my wife, I was like, no, I want to be involved in these school board meetings.
Yep.
And if they allow parents to speak, I want to be there.
Yep.
And even if it's just defending something, I just want to say something and kind of let people know, hey, look, there is someone in the community that cares about these things, that cares about godliness and wants to honor God, and that might just encourage people to speak up as well at school
Yep.
board meetings, you know what I mean? So, bro, in Tennessee, man, it's happening here too, bro. It's happening
Yeah.
here. I can't tell you, man, how, like, well, you wouldn't be surprised because in California it's much worse, but out here, bro, it's coming out here. You see things and you just wonder how in the world did it get to Tennessee, and it's here. So although you homeschool, get involved in school board meetings.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like they're using your tax money to support these things, so why not? So.
Sure. Yeah. No. I agree. These things to bring it to ground level too. Again, as we're talking about the whole person, and we're Calvinists, right? We believe in the sovereignty of God in all things, and in salvation we would never have chosen God. We would never have come to Him in faith unless He had changed our hearts. I was just talking to my son today because he asked me, he has some really deep questions. You know how they ask a million questions a day and then you're super
Yeah.
wiped out, but then they
Yeah.
ask deeply philosophical question that they don't even know they ask, and you're like, okay, I got to address that one. He asked, why do people believe lies? Such a simple question, right? But I was at first I was, oh, that's simple. It's like, oh, it's not very simple to answer. I told him, okay, why would someone choose chocolate over he hates potato bugs. He calls them potato bugs. Why would someone choose chocolate, or what would you choose, chocolate or potato bugs? He's like, chocolate. Why? Because the other one's nasty. So I was basically getting to we choose those things that we are attracted to, the things that we like, the things that we desire.
Yeah.
What are our desires? What's the state of our desires?
Mhm.
It's twisted, it's broken, it's fallen. And so we desire those things that are in accordance with our will, where our wills are messed up. And so we need someone to fix that. Guess what? We can't fix that. Only God, only God's Holy Spirit can change our hearts and renew them. When speaking to that aspect of how He gets to the very root of man, right? Here's Kuyper, and a good kind of closing quote for this
Yeah.
thought. He said, Calvinism not merely prune the branches and clean the stem, right? You can take a plant and just, okay, clean it out. You don't know what the state of the roots are. That's where the real health of the plant is. And so he continues, Calvinism not merely prune the branches and clean the stem, but reach down to the very root of our human life. So, and that's not just our souls, right? Everything. Yeah. This is why public theology, we're not talking about it, but in politics, it's important because as Christians, we don't only worry about our souls, right? Or we don't only think that our souls are affected merely by what we hear preached or we're safe as long as we don't believe in heresies, blah, blah, blah. No, guess what? What you watch, what you listen to, what you expose yourself to, what you allow to come into your mind, what you allow to come into your heart, all of those things are things that God says, mine. He claimed, remember, who was it? Was it Kuyper? So there's not a single inch in the universe over which God does not claim mine. And that includes your heart. That includes your brain, your eyes, your hair, your eyelids, your eyelashes. Everything belongs to God and His authority. So as Christians, our desires are now being twisted back into place where they should be, right? Where they should have been, where Adam was first created in. And so that we can now desire God and we can choose those things that we would not have chosen before. So with that, I hope that is an encouragement for people listening that go, how do I even start with this? Well, never stop starting. Start with, what do I need to do 3 hours family worship? Do I need keep it as simple as possible. Read the Word of God. Don't complicate it any more than that. You were talking about, oh, you need to read Lex Rex. Start with how about you start with the Bible? You know, that's the starting point. And you'll see how your mind will be renewed. Things that you never thought you would see before start to become clear. You see how the law of God has bearing over everything.
Amen, bro. And then man, I mean, starts with the family first. So don't try to be a reformed superhero and start writing letters to government officials right away. And so especially if you're not dealing with the family, right?
If you want to do that, by all means. I'm not trying to say don't do it.
The things I know someone who he probably won't watch this, but he's a firefighter, and for a while he went on this like 6-month thing of just writing letters to government officials. And if you know in Tennessee, man, it rains a lot over here, so firefighters are just like just trying to figure out what to do, you know. And and so yeah, I asked him, I was like, hey, so like what did anything come out of that? He's like, a few responses and things like that, and but one thing that he does like to focus on is on his family, you know, and he actually stopped doing that because he realized that he was taking home with him, and it was just overwhelming, right? So he just went back to just focus on his kids' discipleship and also encouraging his wife. So anyway, he probably won't watch this, but I just thought that was kind of funny, man. I mean, yeah, we could do both things. We could do both things, but
Sure.
but at the same time, I would really caution Christians that if you're just a public Christian, not a private one, then I mean, I'm sorry, bro. I mean, like
I want nothing to do with what you. I don't care what you say.
yeah. Examine your hearts, because it will happen where it will happen where you trip up. You know what I mean? And then next thing you know, you're making the church look bad. You know, so it's just not a good thing. So yeah, start with yourself, with your family, and then local body, church, and then from there, you know, you can start doing public theology. So anyway, hey man, I know we focused a lot on public theology, bro, but we'll talk more about it next month. Hey, well, and thank you for taking time, man, out of your evening to talk to me, man. And yeah, until next time, man. Hopefully, again, Daryl, I know he intended to come on, but he couldn't, and that's okay. But I do want Daryl to come on sometime, man. And yeah, anyways, guys, again, that's about it. I mean, go follow. Let me share it one more time for you, bro. I want to
Thanks, man.
let people know. See if I can get it really quick. There we go. Go follow Vince Page. Daryl, sorry, the only one watching right now. Daryl, if you know Spanish, but if not, you can still like it and share it with anyone they know that speaks Spanish. Some good stuff on there too, and like I said, you know, Ben he also writes on Since Edified. You know, he's a really good writer. So, anyways, that's about it, guys. Till next time.
Hey, Daryl. Hi, guys. God bless.